I will make a short introduction. Mr. Viktor Mykyta actually wanted to join us offline, but yesterday he announced that he would be online. And yesterday we actually got the news about the presidential decree of him being appointed the head of the regional administration. So we may just have a joke that the result of the first day of our discussion was appointment of one of our speakers as the head of the regional administration. So we may predict what might happen today. So let's come back to the topic of our discussion. And actually, this is not one topic. We can divide it into three blocks. And I would like to make the introductory comment on the topic, and later we get to the discussion. I want us to concentrate on three things: development of regions or regional development. Well, actually, there is a subtle nuance between two expressions. The second block, cooperation between the regions. And the third block will be about cooperation between the regions, but we shall discuss cooperation not only of the Ukrainian regions, but also the foreign regions. When we are talking about international regional development, we understand that this is the multi-layer and multi-factor process. But let's consider two big blocks here. The first one is the political block. I mean, the political rules the regions are guided by, what can be changed and what probably should be changed in post-war Ukraine. And the second point, this is economy, finance, how the state, and I'm talking about primarily of the state, should implement this regional policy. Because when we mention regional development, we immediately think about state regional policies, some regional programs, etc. But there are also some other tools which can be used in order to facilitate or vice versa hamper the regional development. And I will probably start with the political part, particularly in the context of post-war Ukraine. And I would like you to draw your attention to the following thing. Decentralization is ongoing, and yesterday we discussed this point as well, and our speakers were just talking about decentralization and its second stage. And this second stage probably is more about stronger roles of the regions. And if we look at our neighbors, Central European countries, then we see the example when the role of the regions is really great. And even the nature of forming the regional authorities is different. So the head of regional administration, for example, in Ukraine, is appointed by the president, and we see very clear state vertical. But, for example, if we take the position of Marshallok in Poland, he or she is elected by the local parliament. If we take the Czech Republic, again, the head of regional administration is elected by the local deputies. In Slovakia, there are direct elections where the heads of the regions are elected. So the question is, should Ukraine adopt this format, or probably the format with the central vertical is better for Ukraine, is more effective, is more convenient? So this is the question that we can think about, and I think our speakers may probably have different opinions, and probably I will ask to answer this question Viktor Mykyta. And he has been working at the level of the region, and he has been working with the issues of regional developments, So the question is, should the state perform only controlling function, or should we adopt the format when we have very clear centralized vertical, and whether this format is more effective? Mr. Mykyta? Good morning, dear colleagues. Really, I wanted to join you offline. Unfortunately, didn't manage, but still, spiritually, I'm with you. Yes, Zakarpattia was reopened yesterday, and I'm really happy that Zakarpattia will be chaired by the representatives of the local community, and some of the people were actually in my team, and well, we always set the goal of the regional development of Zakarpattia, and so my congratulations to the people from Zakarpattia. And I think that this policy of economic growth will be going on in the future. It will be one of my responsibilities. So, being head of the Zakarpattia regional administration, I had certain visions. I communicated to the heads of territorial communities, and these ideas have changed. Then there was the full-scale invasion, and it was necessary to make decisions promptly. It was no time, we didn't have any time to organize proper sessions and meetings. And the powers I have enabled me to have peace and stability here, and at the same time, we managed to preserve certain decentralization processes. I don't know whether there is another country in the world that has been conducting the decentralization reform during the wartime, when the front line was more than 1,000 kilometers. How we should cope with these challenges? Well, the complicated challenges faced by Ukraine make Ukraine stronger, and I do hope that it will be the case in future. Today I see Ukraine in different format, performing different tasks. In Western region, I was trying to establish the economic area. I was trying to ensure cohesion at the local level. Now this task is set by the president. We are talking about our internal cohesion and unity. You cannot defeat the enemy if you lack this internal cohesion. We understand there are difficulties with the weapons and with the equipment, but anyway, we have to be united. And I think that decentralization should be ongoing, and first and foremost in Western regions. We have been talking about the cooperation between the regions. Well, now I understand that the cooperation between the regions means that we should have cooperation between Zakarpattia and Kharkiv, Chernivtsi and Kherson. And we have, for example, the industrial regions which are located in the east. But the industry map is changing, and if it is changing, it should be done with the participation of local communities. I can clearly state that decentralization has its place, and Ukraine is on its way, irrespective of all the circumstances. And by doing this, we'll demonstrate to the world that we are a democratic, civilized European country. It is important to avoid political games here. It is important to avoid the situation when the insider, not having understanding of certain issues, will be trying to break this scheme from the inside. And we still have to make operative decisions. Should the head of the regional administration be appointed by the president, or probably by the government, or probably this position should be elected at the general elections in the region, or should it be the head of the local council, probably regional council? Nobody will be able to answer this question right now. So decentralization has already happened, but if we do this survey and ask who is responsible for the garbage on the street, probably lots of people of the local community would say, okay, probably the head of the regional administration. And very few people understand that actually the power is in the hands of local people. You can have the connection with the head of local community, with the local deputies. You may go directly to the deputies and ask them why it's like that, why it isn't like that. Very few people understand that the local budgets are not the budgets just for food. And for example, if the local head of the local community thinks that the local budget is small, probably certain actions should be taken about it. There are some people who understand that the budget is growing if there are new jobs created. Our region is the region of relocation, and I see how the heads of territorial communities were actually competing for this relocation. They were trying to have relocated businesses in their communities. And the thinking and the actions behind of every local deputy are, well, are probably a bit different, but step by step we are approaching this ideal model for the local budgets, which brings funds to the local budgets. And again, it is based on the creation of new jobs. If the head of the territorial community understands that he or she should create new jobs, and these new jobs will create some budget, and then there will be money in your budget, and this money will be used on infrastructure, on certain other things, which will make this territorial community even more attractive. And then even more businesses will come to your territorial community. And then you will be able to say that I have some stabilization fund and I can do something for the local community. So when at the local level, the territorial communities will understand that this is primarily their responsibility, and the local residents will understand their own role at the level of elections, when they will elect people who know what to do. And now I am talking about the legislation and bylaws. So these are the rules, and well, definitely certain work should be done about them as well. And I'm really pleased that there are lots of areas where Yulia Sviridenko has been working on. We really have very good communication with her. Later, work with the military people, and this is different task, but well, whatever we are doing is aimed at the development of Ukraine. Well, there may be lots of criticism, but I have been working at the local level. I have been communicating to people, and I understand that whatever we are doing at the local level is aimed at creating new jobs. New jobs means taxes. Taxes means good salaries. And when we say that we want to support our local manufacturers, it means that we want to support the local community, every resident of the local community. It is important for the government to understand it, because the president is initiating a number of programs created in Ukraine. I'm talking about cashback program and many others. And well, they have been created specially to ensure the development of the local communities. I think that there should be definitely certain modernization regarding the number of communities we have. Well, we actually were immersed in decentralization, and partially we have forgotten about certain economic issues. There are some communities which are not strong economically, and that means they need subvention from the state. But if they do not see their areas of development, if we see that they do not become independent from the economic point of view, if they do not have agency from the economic point of view, they should be joined to those communities which are stronger, which are richer. But again, there is no place for politics here. Thank you. Well, your idea is clear, and I kindly ask you to wrap up. I will summarize. Decentralization, yes, we have to actually polish it. Well, if you have any comments to the presentations of others, please tell. Well, if we started with Kiev, I will probably give the floor to Solomiya Bobrovska. And well, she is the member of the parliament of Ukraine, but also she was the head of a big region, probably complicated region. So I would reiterate my question. What will be the second stage, and whether it should take place in general? We also understand the problems, and the previous speaker has already mentioned part of them. There are some weaker communities, but well, the level of the regions is more or less the same. So what should be done? Or probably we should not do anything. What we should do for the regions in order to ensure their development, in order to ensure a range of tools to make those regions more competitive.
Yes, so good morning to everyone. It's so good that everybody is awake so early after yesterday's evening. Actually, the question is different. Is it centralization or decentralization? And Ukraine can be divided into two parts, two camps, and I'm going to be critical in this to support Viktor, because it's one thing when we are looking at the communities and heads of administrations in the west of Ukraine, even in the center of Ukraine, and that's an absolutely different story if we have a look at the pre-war period and war period in the east and south, where we have paternalism, and this is the east and the south. The inside, the discourse is different, the range of problems is different from the problems faced by the communities in the west and in the center. And that's why when we are talking about decentralization or centralization, we probably have to give one example, which is quite illustrative. Well, I know that there were some communities located closer to Belarus, and we know that heads of communities were trying to do something to ensure safety. But that's another story regarding what heads of administrations were doing in terms of occupation in Kherson, Sumy, Kyiv region, Donetsk region, where we had the hostilities right away, and actually nobody could have expected that occupation to happen. What I'm driving at, the heads of administrations didn't have any contact with heads of communities. And in some communities, they really had problems with that, and heads of administrations, heads of communities disappeared. Now we have a lot of cases initiated by law enforcement bodies. These are the cases of the heads of communities who just left their communities, who just went away. They went away because they didn't know what they should do. The first issue was survival. No instructions were given to them how they were supposed to ensure the survival of the community. There were no instructions, there was no security service in place, and they were at a loss. And the women, the men left in those frontline communities, well, just were helped by those heads of communities who didn't leave. There were a few of them. we know that we had a lot of issues with collaboration. People were giving fuel to the Russians, but heads of communities were doing local things like helping people with fuel, helping with them with food or with anything else. Now we've got plenty of cases for collaboration and for treason against those people. You know that at some point in time, there was a ban introduced for the deputies of different levels for going abroad. And, if a woman, we have a case when a woman was the head of the community, and she's got 7 cases initiated against her for her leaving abroad. But she was allowed and she came back. She built a modular town, a cottage for IDPs in Kiev region, but she has to face those criminal cases. But when we are talking about the east and the south, so I have strong doubts regarding the following. The heads of administrations, like suppose the one in Odessa region, really were facing challenges, and there are a lot of concerns about how they acted. In particular, if we take the head of Odessa regional administration, there are a lot of doubts regarding him. But it's one story having the war and some military things, but the story could be different if you are bordering on some Bessarabian part of Moldova, and there are many actors in that field. There are different camps, starting with national minorities with their own interests, and there are some political moods. So it's really a problem. By the way, when I was the head of Odessa region in 2017, I was given call by his ambassadors, and they were saying that why are you trying to mix Ukrainians and national communities into one community? What kind of question is it? How can you possibly ask that? You're intervening into the political policy of the state. So these are really burning issues. And when we don't have martial law, I think that in those times when there is some opposition between different political parties in the region, in the community, they just have the fight for survival. In particular, if the community has some financial capacity to move on. So if you're stopped, if some barriers are created by the head of the administration, the community has to fight with this. We have good stories from Volyn, from Vinnytsia, from Lviv, from Ivano-Frankivsk regions. There is the vertical, like the head of the administration, and the deputies. They normally work as one common team. But unfortunately, that's the West. Zakarpattia and Western regions are one thing. It's easier here to work. But in the East and in the South, unfortunately, state security was not always the priority, at least for most communities and for most heads of administrations. So what do? We cannot have different rules for different areas in our country. That would not be possible. Yes, we cannot do it, but we can intensify the work of our law enforcement authorities and the judiciary in those areas. And then, when the military administrations or regional state administrations don't see the limits, and when the heads of the communities don't see the limits, there will be law enforcement there. But I'm in favor of decentralization. I support it. I just mean that we have to change something because we already covered some stages of decentralization. We know what communities are not capable of doing everything on their own. We need to have consolidation or aggregation of those communities. We have to relaunch the whole story. That's what I mean. Okay? Let's move along our logical line, and it would be good if the incumbent head of the regional council could make some comments. He represents the local self-government. So, Andriy, maybe your vision is different regarding who should play the most important role in the management of the region, and what should the formula for the development of the regional authorities be for the region to be a success. Good morning to everyone. So first of all, I would like to focus on the challenges each region of Ukraine is facing and Ukraine is faced with in general. So the first challenge is war and all the related issues, and the second one is European integration. So how do we build within this paradigm an effective system of administration in between the national authorities, the regional authorities, and the communities. Well, it's really a major challenge. I can tell you that Rivne region, the same as the Zakarpattia region, is the region in the rear, but there is just one small difference. We have 200 kilometers of border on Belarus, and our activity majorly focuses on the protection of the border, on the defense of the border. What about the formula, you're asking? Well, I would probably get back to what Solomiya said because she's been right. She's been talking about capacity. And when we were going through the first stage of decentralization, whatever we call it, we made a lot of exceptions because we thought that, okay, this community doesn't have any single enterprise in its area. They don't have the capacity, but they are so much willing to have their own community, and we created this community. But unfortunately, the economic issues and administrative issues have proven us that this was the wrong decision, and we have to learn by our mistakes and to remedy the situation. That's why I think that now, even in times of war, in particular in western regions of Ukraine, we can get back to those small communities which don't have the required capacity, that are actually eating up the taxes which are earned by the community, but earned, it's in inverted commas, because these are just the taxes paid from the salaries of the budget staff, of the public staff, of civil servants. So that is a vicious circle which doesn't form any competitive ability or the willingness of the community to raise some investment. And if we take Rivne region, I would say that half of the communities don't have any plan to follow. I don't mean here even the strategic plan, but the plan regarding what they should do today and tomorrow. And if we also take into account those two challenges that I mentioned at the beginning, war and European integration, well, it all adds up to the situation, and the communities, from the smallest to the largest ones, need to understand that Europe is about communities and cohesion, but it's about strong regions, because if you have strong communities, strong regions, you have a strong state. And about the system of control, be it the head of the regional administration or the prefect, it doesn't matter. If the function is performed effectively, the whole system will be effective. So, from the point of view of the head of the regional council, I would say that, of course, I would like to have more power in my hands. But from the point of view of effective administration, I would say that we do have a sufficient number of mechanisms. And now, even though the some budget functions, budget allocation function have been taken away from the regional level, but anyway, our systems would work better if the head of the regional state administration is entitled to pass operational decisions, quick decisions. Development of the region should be the home assignment for all the executives at the regional level, and this is exactly where the issues of decentralization come to the front. I mean that we need to find a hybrid model. We may be striving for a perfect system, but in wartime and in post-war time, we need to find a hybrid model focusing on the capacity, because competitive, capable, productive, and effective communities, as labeled yesterday by Mr. Sheketa, should contribute to the development of the region, and these should be the communities with the European integration vector. Thank you, colleagues. We are all acquainted with each other, maybe not that much with Serhiy, but he has not yet had his speech, so please, no offense taken by any of the three of you, but if you listen later to the recording of your speeches, because you know that we do have this video recording, you will see that now you are commenting more about the communities, but it's more or less clear with the communities. We see what went well, what went bad. But I would ask you to speak more on the level of the region, because that is what has not taken place, and we actually don't know how we are supposed to structure this work with the regional level in the background of decentralization. So what about the second part of decentralization in the future, the regional level, and do we need it or not? Of course, I understand your messages, and I was going to address this question to Serhiy, who represents the community, because we do have this basic community level, regional, and the state level. I'm not mentioning sub-regional level because actually it's almost non-existent. We can actually ignore it. In physics, they speak about ignoring something, so we could speak about those three levels, and I'm interested more in terms of what should be done with the regions. But okay, I've listened to your messages, and now let me ask Serhiy, who represents the community, to, well, please, Serhiy, you're working with community development. You can see the way decentralization has affected the community. You see the pluses and minuses, so the pros and cons. So let's switch to the topic of cooperation with the regions. Maybe some cooperation models that are used for cooperation between communities could also be used for cooperation between regions. And you represent a large community of Chernivtsi. It's a powerful economic community. So, do you have any cases when some smaller or less powerful communities just survive at the expense of larger ones? Or does it not depend on the size of the community? Is there any cooperation between different level communities? And can this model be used for cooperation between the regions? Well, thank you, Andriy. Good morning, dear colleagues. I'm really happy to be staying among such highly distinguished people. So let me quickly respond to the question and to the comments on decentralization. I support decentralization. I really think that this is one of the most successful reforms in the history of our state, and it should be just because of political will that you one day quit your significant powers and at the national level and give those decision-making powers to the regional level, because then communities are allowed to use their own resources and the opportunities that they have created. Because if the community create jobs, taxes are paid, and those taxes stay in the community, that is the principle, that is the basis for development. So within this reform, we were talking about fiscal reform, fiscal decentralization, budgetary decentralization, and it led to other sectoral reforms. So decentralization is actually a comprehensive reform, and thank you, Andriy, for mentioning that the reform has several tiers, and the basic tier refers to communities, but all the further tiers or levels, if we go deeper into that, you will see that the reform was developed together by our European and national experts, and it's really difficult to implement this reform because in most EU member states there were some traditions for regional cooperation. Suppose you have mentioned that in some regions they are not appointing but they are electing heads of regions, but we had to launch it all from scratch. That's why we are learning by our mistakes, but it also adds up some motivation and capacity to us. Why do we have this Soviet rudiment of raions? Well, it's difficult to say. Of course, I would say that the logic should have been different, that we should have cancelled this district or rayon division. There should be no rayon councils and rayon administrations. That should be just the community level and the level of prefectures. But whether we elect or whether we appoint heads of institutions, well, it depends. Prefects would have a supervisory function. They would control enforcement of legislation and the work of the community in the legal field. So I think that they should be a representative executive body which is appointed by the president. But when we are talking about some other officials, we could be talking about elections. But I think that we already have all the prescriptions for the reform for its next levels. We just need to implement them because the communities have shown that they are really capable. And I agree with Solomiya. She said that there was too little communication, and everybody, after the full-scale invasion, and everybody was just passing his or her own decisions. There was lack of communication, but the communities did it all. They relocated businesses, they hosted IDPs, they are trying to ensure rehabilitation for servicemen. They work with other regions the way you have mentioned. There is also some cooperation at the international level. They are trying to use the money that given by our donors from the EU in particular. And if we're talking about the rear regions, like in the west of Ukraine, uh, there are the requirements set by the EU for candidates to accession that are referred to cross-border cooperation, regional cooperation, and these are opportunities which other regions don't have, so we have to use those opportunities. So let's keep going with decentralization, because this is exactly the reform that makes our country strong and capable, starting with the basic level, and we should move upwards. As far as cooperation is concerned, of course, this cooperation should be there at the interregional and intermunicipality levels. It's not just sharing experience, which is important. And by the way, let me draw your attention to the fact that quite often we are asked, why do our international partners need it? Because Ukrainian regions, cities get some advantages and benefits because of this cooperation. This is humanitarian aid, some assistance with equipment, technologies. But why do European partners need it? And I would say that the most important thing is exchange of experience. They are really interested in how we respond to the challenges we are faced with at our level. They are getting ready because they don't know what this war is going to flow into. They want to know our experience about the first days of the war and our response to the war. They want to know how we work with IDPs, how we communicate with the military men, how conscription is taking place, how we manage to provide healthcare services. That is their priorities for now. If we're talking about the cooperation between communities and cities inside the regions, well, there should be just cooperation. Should not be the case that somebody is stronger, somebody is less strong. There should be competition, but it should be solid competition. I remember the process of relocation started, and the journalists started this competition between Western regions. Who will have more relocated businesses? But this is the wrong approach. This is not good competition. We may just compete with other regions in other countries to make our businesses still stay here and not go abroad. It's not important whether a company functions in Lviv region, Zakarpattia region. They need to stay in Ukraine and to pay taxes to the national and to the local budgets. And to ensure this, we need cooperation, we need communication. That's why in such tricky areas we definitely need to be looking for partners, and we need to be developing the network of cooperation with other communities. We've got some international intermunicipal agreements, and we have internal intermunicipality agreements. Suppose we have an agreement with Kupiansk. By the way, next week we will sign an agreement of intermunicipality cooperation with one of the communities in Sumy region. And so we are working with the communities that have some need in terms of relocation, evacuation of their IDPs. So it's good. It's exchange of experience, and this is help in the issues the communities are now facing. This is a very good tool, a very good case, which is the best practice of Europe, because the concept of intensification of regional cooperation is really something that matters. So we need to be looking for points in contact. We need to exchange our experience and knowledge and move towards European integration and victory. Thank you. You have actually touched upon all the three blocks I asked you to speak on. You spoke about development of regions, even international cooperation, decentralization. Viktor, can you hear us? Because you disappeared for a period of time. So now I've got a tricky question, provocative question for you. Because I've got experience of communicating with you, and I've recalled one thing. even back then, it kind of resonated with me, and now I'm interested in whether your opinion has changed after you moved to Kiev. So, when there was the beginning of this process of relocation, and the Zakarpattia IT cluster started being shaped up, and many IT people moved to Uzhhorod. I know that at that period of time you had some problematic talks with your colleagues from Kharkiv or Dnipro because you created certain terms for those IT guys. They were supposed to pay taxes here in the Zakarpattia region, and they were accusing you of the fact that you are trying to kind of tame their taxpayers. And you just said that I'm doing everything what is good for my region. And now, when you're responsible for Kyiv, for the national policy, for the regional policy in Kyiv, well, I still understand that you are in favor of the Zakarpattia region, but you could not be neglecting the interests of other regions. So, what do you think? Does such a position of the region in regards to other regions, was it the right one or not exactly? Of course, it was the right one. What shall I say? That was the experience no country in the world has. And I'm not sure that anybody generally has an experience of fighting with a country which has much more military equipment, and we generally don't have some types of air bombs or drones or something like this. But that is the issue of respect, self-respect. We Ukrainians have already gained a great experience, and we have to be proud of ourselves. Well, the task of Western regions, be it Volyn, Zakarpattia, Chernivtsi, in the first days and weeks of the war was to keep the economy going. And I think that we really coped with that task. The tasks of heads of communities in Donetsk, Mykola, Kherson regions was different. It was to help the servicemen to preserve their communities, and that was this human factor, patriotic nature of Ukrainians that really worked. And it's not because of decentralization. I'm sure that when the head of the community passed the decision to stay in the occupied territories or to do something to support the armed forces of Ukraine, was not doing this because he was the head of the territorial community. He was doing this as a Ukrainian. Unfortunately, well, we are still facing a lot of challenges, but let me focus on Zakarpattia, uh, where I had my previous position. We, I think, saved about 500 millions of investment that was going to, this was the amount of money that was actually leaving Ukraine. It was on the verge, but we managed to support some companies, enterprises, and the investment stayed in Zakarpattia region. And I really had just some discussions with the heads of other regions. They asked me, why are you creating IT cluster? But that is just solid, sound competition, fair competition. But there was too little common sense because we were overwhelmed with emotions. That was war, and our taxpayers are taken away. That's why a number of companies are not now staying in the West, are still paying taxes in the Eastern communities. They are violating tax legislation, but nobody is paying attention to that. But that's not what's most important. The whole world told us that we would give up within 3 days, but within those 3 days, all Ukrainians together managed to preserve Ukraine. So let's keep preserving it. Regional decentralization we are now discussing presupposes that we need to get clear whether we need those processes or not. Be it the head of the regional council, be it the head of the regional administration, it doesn't matter what the function, what the position is, but we need to understand whether we should go over to decentralization now or later. The situation with decentralization in other countries is different. We focus too much on the communities. We don't focus on the regions at the moment because sometimes communities have larger budgets than the whole region has. So, a number of different issues we definitely cannot answer today because we are talking about development of regions in general. So, let me just mention one thing. to stay united, we should focus and cope with a number of war-related problems. We need just to hear each other, to support each other, and everything is going to be fine. Thank you. Thank you. As far as I understand, the logic you have mentioned shows us that the businessman could have stayed in Zakarpattia or in Madrid or in Košice. So it was your mission to make him stay in Zakarpattia within the Ukrainian economy, and then he is not working for the economy of other countries. So thank you for your answer. And I would still like to go back to the issue of money, because you have rightfully pointed out that the region with the budget of the same level as the budget of the city of regional importance, well, if the region has such a budget, it cannot be a good player in the arena of developmental projects. And we are just talking about the overall figures of the budget, but if we take a look at the structure of the budget, we will see that 95% are just some municipal payments and salaries, and for development they will just have some 5%. It's not so in cities, because the cities have a higher reserve for this development budget, as it is called. That's why let's go backwards to the development tools. The state has got the state regional policy implemented using some of its tools, like the like taxes. I'm talking here about peaceful times, though even in wartime we still have some development projects, but of course fewer of them. What is your view on the following? And that is why, by the way, the question to Solomiya, is to the MP who is actually having something to do with the passing of those decisions. So can we plan any changes in the tax legislation in the way that financial resources stay more within the regions? It's true. It's not the state that determines what we do. Like, we have the national program for building some sports grounds, and we do it everywhere. But what could we do for more money to stay in the budgets of the municipalities and regions, for them to be able to guide this process on their own? Or probably we should have some separate taxes for the regions, and then the regions will be entitled to play with those tax benefits, tax preferences for the sectors which the region considers to be its strategic priority.
And you have 3 minutes. This is a question to you and to Solomiya as an MP. Well, it can be decided only in Kiev. We won't be able to do it at the local level. Well, now everybody focuses on the state budgets, and, well, I came from the remote region, and we have decided to see what is happening at the local level with the budget. And these are billions of hryvnias. And how is this amount of money used? Well, they are used somehow. There is no strategy. Well, it's good that this money is there at the local level, but it's important to have professionals who will know how to use this money, how the state can regulate this issue. Probably the state should coordinate these things. Well, currently I cannot answer this question. This question is an open question. Thank you. I didn't vote last time for taking away military income tax from the communities. Well, the local communities actually are to blame, because they didn't use this money. And Kyiv said, okay, if it's like that, we'll take 90%. And it was actually in October 2023. And currently we have the story that these 100 billion hryvnias are not used either by the ministry or the state agencies. So when we are talking about bringing this money back, okay, let's do it, but they were a different formula. Okay, 35% for the community, 35 to the state budget, and 30 to a certain military unit. But now the story is different. Not all the communities are ready to buy the things the military people need because they are afraid of checks and inspections. So, for example, there are military units that do not have their financial officer, and therefore, again, they do not use the money that comes to them from the community. So the money is not used in the community, the money is not by the military unit, and so on and so forth. It's really a pity that Viktor is not here personally. And when we discuss this amalgamation of communities, so let's probably agree about the following. The heads of regional centers should be brought together, and well, and also the heads of military administrations. Well, you just bring together the heads of regional centers. Well, Kiev is always there. Klitschko is there, and he will be there. In Dnipro, we have Filatov. This is the actually city close to the front line, and still we have Frankivsk and Lviv. You cannot ignore them. And we are talking about local self-governance authorities as the fourth or the fifth branch of power. I'm talking about the heads of the regional centers. Nobody was talking to them. I think it should not be the case. And for example, let's take Ihor Kolykhaiko, the mayor of Kherson, who is a person who stayed with the community or a person who actually can be accused of treason. So he was actually taken to the Russian Federation. So how do we perceive him? And it's not even a question to the law enforcement authorities. He is the mayor of the regional center, Kherson, where Russians were at 9 o'clock on the 24th of February. Well, I was actually asking about the money. This was the first question. Probably military income tax should be brought back. Well, now this money is used for the army. Well, that's the point. Well, I'm ready. I was always open for any communication. I was talking to people, and this is something we are going to do uh, as far as the heads of the big regional centers and towns are concerned. But we should also remember about rural areas, about some simpler things. Talking about military tax, well, where does it come from? Well, the priests probably set a strategy about it. You cannot imagine how many drones were bought, and these drones are not used because the technical tasks are changed all the time. And EU certain budgets are not used. There are grounds for this. Well, definitely the military people think how they should change their activities, but somebody is using these issues for political aims. I usually state that we have to focus on healthy economy, on creating new jobs in certain regions, and I usually set this goal for every head of a community, and people should not just be satisfied with the good situation. I definitely know what I want to achieve and what tasks I should set for me and my colleagues. Probably not, now it's not the place to discuss the military tax. I was asking about some other things. I was just asking whether the state is ready to share its centralized budget with the regions, and there may be different formula. It's not only about military tax, we just discuss it a lot, and therefore it immediately comes up in our mind. But there are some other examples. Look at the Czech Republic. The regions actually have almost all the money, and some part of this money goes to the state, and the regions are responsible for education. So we should not collect all the money in Kiev and then send the subvention to the region. But actually, these are the regions that have the money and funds education or funds healthcare. So probably, considering the circumstances today, we are not ready to discuss these things. But I'm really happy about the fact that our forum enables us to communicate with the MPs and the head of the presidential office, not in Kiev, but here in Uzhhorod. And by doing this, we help not only our region, but the entire country. Dear colleagues, we do not have lots of time, and I would like to raise another point. It has already been partially mentioned by Serhiy. This is cooperation with the regions, but I'm talking about the European regions. Rivne, Odessa, Chernivtsi, Zakarpattia regions, they all participate in different transborder cooperation programs. For example, Zakarpattia is really lucky. They participate in 4 programs, the Polish program, Romanian program, Danube strategy, and another one. So we cannot boil down this cooperation to getting some humanitarian aid. So we have cooperation because we were given this and that. To some extent, this might be considered as a humiliating approach because we are presented as weak partners. For example, when we came to the Czech Republic to the Digitalization Forum, and the deputy had introduced the program which is called Transcarpathian Action, and later it was renamed My Zakarpattia. So the point was about a number of ideas for IDPs, etc., etc. So when we presented this DIA application at their conference, the Czech colleagues were really amazed. So they learned from us as well. So you have just 2 minutes. Apart from those things that we already know about, what else is important when we are talking about the cooperation with the European border regions? Well, first of all, this is the opportunity to get some grant money from some programs, and you know that there was the joint position of the regions of Ukraine, and therefore we managed to get the lion's share of one of the Polish programs. What is important? It is important not to beg. There should be a paradigm created for the European partners to understand that we are a full-fledged partner. We should be useful for them. We should be interesting for them. And the second point, these contacts should be in a way that our business is developing here in Ukraine at the expense of our market and their market. Because we are talking about new jobs created in our regions, taxes paid in our regions. We have a huge challenge of people who are staying abroad, and these are capable people. These are people who can work. And one more important thing, this contact and this cooperation should emphasize all the advantages. We have a very good vocational education, and we should use it. We should not just claim that we have trained a nurse and this nurse goes abroad, and, for example, our neighbors have qualified human resources, well trained. Well, this cooperation is necessary, but it should be a partnership on the equal par, not just asking for help. And again, we should share our experience. The application is, well, something amazing. We also have something to brag about. Serhiy partially has mentioned it. Yes, I will probably do the follow-up to what has been already mentioned. We have just discussed the budgets. Just one remark. We sent the military income tax to some military units. We are still doing the same when this military tax has been taken away. And the point is that those military units didn't have anything from the state for their needs. If we are talking about education, there is a very good example of vocational education. But why it doesn't work well? Because it is the city council that is paying for everything and is giving the premises. So if we want to develop vocational education, we have to change something. And again, there is huge requests for vocational staff from relocated businesses. International cooperation, in my opinion, it's not about money, it's about trust. We have to demonstrate that we are reliable partners, that we are full-fledged members of the European community. So it should not be done with statements. It should not be just statements about European values and being ready to be the members of the European community. We should show and demonstrate that we are full-fledged and equal partners and are ready to implement the projects which are beneficial both for the Ukrainians and for our foreign colleagues. And by doing this, we'll be able to strengthen both Ukrainian and foreign regions. And this is the logic behind trans-border cooperation. When we approximate the neighboring regions to those counterparts in the EU. And we definitely have to use different tools because we enhance the capacity of Ukrainian regions. We have the chance to become partners in different neighborhood programs, in the European Commission programs aimed at improving infrastructure, improving cultural ties, and so on and so forth. But there is one more element, and this is cooperation between the twin cities, twin regions. Now this element is really very important. I remember the first days of the full-scale invasion, and I remember us sitting in our office, and I picked up the receiver, and I just was asking my people, who is calling, what country was calling, because there were lots and lots of calls of our partners who were trying to help. So this cooperation is vital and crucial for us, and it is extremely beneficial for our communities. We should definitely develop it. So who should strengthen who? The regions should strengthen the cities or vice versa. The models are different. For example, Chernivtsi is a twin city with Düsseldorf. Now the region wants to become friends with one of the richest community in Germany. So we should use all the tools, but it should be constructive cooperation and implementable projects, not just sending to our twin cities some victory plans. We should suggest and offer specific cases and specific projects, and only in that case we'll be able to talk about equality or full partnership, and we'll be able to state that we are not just want to become the members of the EU, but we are ready to become the members of the EU, and we have something to share with our European partners. Solomiya, you have 1 minute, not because you are the former head of the region. We have the Euro region, the Lower Danube, which covers part of Odessa region, Romania and Moldova, and Serhiy is right here. It's about trust. uh, we we were talking about is actual point. Well, we were working on it for a long period of time. Well, it was supposed to be a bridge. That was an infrastructure project. So once again, priority is trust, security, and now we try to cooperate with Romania, with Poland, and we definitely want to send requests about our uh, sky. And once again, it's about also infrastructure because infrastructure is like artery. And I will also make a comment. There is a point which is really important, and I would like to mention it. Working with our European partners, being present in the programs of transborder cooperation, we are partially integrated into the EU on a practical level because we understand the documents, we understand uh, the language. I'm talking about the language of bureaucratic procedures. We understand each other regarding planning budget for 7 years and not just for 1 year. And our regions, to some extent, are at an advantage in comparison with the other regions of Ukraine because they only start gaining this experience in projects like Urbakt and many others. This is really important when we are talking about European integration. And this experience should be used, and we should engage all the people who contribute to this because they understand and know how it works in the European Union. They know the procedures, the processes, and the norms. Dear colleagues, we have just 4 minutes and we have two people who are supposed to provide their comments. And Rosanna has given the mic to Serhiy Hemberg, and then there will be 2 minutes for Mykola Syusko. Good afternoon. Now I'm the regional manager of the projects on competitive economy of Ukraine, and I was actually the deputy head of Rivne administration in the past. Today you have raised a number of important points, and my reflection is that we should work more on the vision, and such platforms as our forum is a great example. And I want to remind you that it was the civil society that initiated this platform, and it is the society that brought us together. So if we do not build these ties between the central authorities, local authorities, and the businesses and the civil society, and if this vision is not coordinated among all of us, we won't have any future development. So all these issues are really important. Thank you very much for raising this discourse, and definitely now we can only work effectively, can only work in a reasonable way. And this is our joint activities. We should not shift the tasks and burden onto each other. These are our joint and common tasks. I'm talking about the central authorities, local authorities, and businesses. So thank you for this discussion, and I do hope we'll continue this work. And Mykola Syusko, I also would like to thank you for a very interesting discussion. I really enjoyed the opinions I have heard, and well, I would like to reflect on a couple of things. Well, we have started discussing the politics of the policies of regional development. The EU has already answered to this. They have been implementing it for decades, and they try to reduce the disproportions between the regions. For example, let's take Hemberg. The GDP of this region is 200 of that of the EU. There are some regions in Romania, for example, when the GDP is on average 35 or 40%. So the EU is trying to ensure a certain equality between the regions, and there is a special policy aimed at this, and lots of funds about this. The European Foundation of Regional Development, the European Social Foundation, and there are billions of euros there. And this is something what we also want to achieve. And we have taken the first step. We have certain foundations that have been opened, Interact, for example, and we also have the foundation, the funds of the European Commission. Interact is interesting, but well, certain projects cover only some regions, but I'm well, such things as Erasmus Plus and many others cover the entire territory of Ukraine. So, for the regions to be able to integrate into the EU, you have to learn how to work with these funds. And Serhiy was right. First of all, it's about trust, then it's about experience and innovations. And in order to be very quick, we have to understand the innovations. We have to understand how the regional development policy is functioning in the EU. The second comment. What is regional development if we break it down into components? These are, first of all, strategies, and we have the updated strategy of regional development. It was the requirement of our partners, and now we update our regional strategies. But it's also about funding. I have already mentioned that we have some limited state resources. The regional budget is restricted as well. And Miroslav mentioned yesterday that lots of money is spent on the Ukrainian army. And here is the challenge we face. So, yes, probably not all the money can be spent on infrastructure, but still there are certain things we can use. Another important point is people and institutions. Somebody should write the projects, and it's important to have these professionals. I'm not talking about just some human resources. We are interested in having good and powerful institutions. In the Zakarpattia region, we have a number of such institutions. Unfortunately, not all of them are permanent, but still the ecosystem of institutions of regional development should be strengthened. And I participated in a number of conferences, and I know that our foreign colleagues have not just one or two institutions of this kind, but they have actually dozens of them. A very important issue, short issue on the amalgamation of regions or communities. I do not think that we should start this discussion. If we look at the example of the EU, they use the NUTS system. There are three levels there, and the second level encompasses the regions from 800,000 people up to several millions. And well, in Ukraine, all the regions are like these. So I think, well, we can think about this issue. This is a debatable issue, but there is also another solution here. In my opinion, in Zakarpattia, this should be a question because, well, all our communities are capable. Probably the level of capability of the communities is different. And in Europe, not all the communities are absolutely capable. But apart from amalgamation or unification of communities, there is also cooperation between communities. Several small communities may cooperate, so we have to decide which area we support. Very briefly about cooperation between the regions. Very often we are talking about cooperation of the territorial communities, and we have signed lots of agreements on regional development. And, well, we have a law on cooperation between territorial communities. But what should we have in order to ensure cooperation at the level of regions? These are joint projects. For example, we have this small Zakarpattia circle, and with the hope that we'll be able to implement these projects. These are the so-called soft projects. And we have mentioned the EU, and there are dozens of programs aimed at different types of exchanges, youth exchanges, cultural exchanges, educational exchanges. For example, Carpathian brand in Ukraine. There are 4 regions that may promote this brand. And definitely we have to share experience. And the final point about international cooperation of communities. Well, we are talking about more about international cooperation of communities. And lots of our communities so far do not have their partners from Europe. And I know that there are lots of donors aiming at this point. And I see that the presidential administration is working in this respect as well. So there are lots of factors here. We have about 20 communities that still lack their partners. Heads of us Volyn, Lviv, and many others. And Berehovo community is the leader. Actually, they have about 20 partners. So here we have to work more. And again, we have to improve the area of territorial communities. And there may be mutually beneficial partnership between regions and communities. So several, for example, communities may get united and sign the agreement with a certain region. And here I support Serhiy and Andriy that we should not think about cooperation as getting humanitarian aid. We should think about win-win strategy, when we give something to our partners and they give something to us. We can use the funds of the EU, and definitely in order to apply for the project, you are supposed to have your European partner. So you should talk to your partners that, well, we do not need your money, but we want you to be our partner.
Yes, we are really pressed for time. We are behind the schedule. So thank you, dear commentators, for your comments, and thank you, dear panelists who have been present at this discussion, and thank you, dear participants, because I am sure that all of us have learned a lot of lessons. Viktor, thank you for joining us online, and thank you all the colleagues who have been with us offline.